NutraCast.
Yeah, I mean, definitely hiring slow, firing fast, right? We've all heard that phrase, but having more conversations with them more than just the phone interview, maybe a face-to-face here or there. Sometimes I like to actually take them on a walk, take them on an activity, because I get to learn more about them. They'll kind of open up a little bit more than a, formal sit-down interview.
Welcome to Think Business with Tyler, sharing our methods and strategies for success. Join in on our conversations with business owners as we highlight their triumphs and detail how they overcame the challenges they faced while continuing to grow and scale their business. It's time to think life, think success, and think business with your host, Tyler Martin.
I have a question for you. What's the biggest challenge holding businesses back from real growth? For many, it's all about finding the right people and creating a culture where they thrive. In this episode, I'm talking with Clifton Savage about exactly that: how to hire smarter, tackle common business struggles, and even a peek into his passion for racing cars. You'll walk away with practical tips and real stories to help you take your business to the next level. Let's go. Hey, Cliff, welcome to the Think Business with Tyler podcast show. How is it going today?
It's going pretty well, Tyler, actually. Weather's nice right now for us, and, things are looking up for the end of the year. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for a little salt in the wounds on my side of the country. We're about to get I think they're calling it a cyclone bomb. I think that just means it's a really bad storm. So unfortunately, I can't appreciate the good weather this time.
Yep. Yeah, it'll start getting cold and gloomy here soon enough. So yeah, trying to get every ounce of it that we can.
Yeah, you get your share for sure. Hey, I'd love to start out with, if you could share, what do you do professionally? And then I'd love to learn something about you personally, maybe some tidbit of information people don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, professionally, what I do right now is essentially really trying to just coach through implementation of our services to really help any type of business that's dealing with staffing issues, where, the biggest issue is recruiting and retention, as well as that, little thing in the middle of training and upskilling and a good onboarding on top of that. So yeah, I've just, from my years of being in a lot of organizations, having a previous business before this one, and having my hand in a lot of other startups and scale ups, that's just been the biggest headache that I see people kind of holds them back from that exponential growth. And so I've found a way to kind of bring some solutions that are, practical and repeatable.
And just to dig just a little bit deeper before I get into the personal tidbit, your model is unique in that you're not actually doing, and correct me if anything I say isn't accurate, you're not actually doing the recruiting, you're actually helping the business owner build this infrastructure, automation system to hire, train, and develop the leadership program. Is that essentially it?
Yeah, that's essentially it. It's definitely focused on, the profit producing positions, so front lines up to middle management, but it's a tool as we teach them and we hand off our operating manuals so they can do it on their own, is to show the responsibility that leadership has too in developing the process and the systems to really have good quality people and then take care of them once they're there too. So yes, I'm not a recruiter. We're not a staffing agency. We are essentially teaching the businesses how to be their own recruiter, because my goal is, whether you're a solopreneur or you've got middle management and you're scaling up to, $5, 10, $15 million in revenue, you can now run this yourself. And I believe there's going to be a higher quality, higher efficiency with doing it in-house and making it affordable to get there too.
Does cash flow have you down? Profit not where you think it should be? Maybe it's the long hours. Let's meet to see if I can help. I bridge driving the financial performance of your business to hit growth and success targets. Book a complimentary meeting at meetforgrowth.com to get started now. Once again, that's meetforgrowth.com. I look forward to talking with you. And thanks for listening to the show.
And I believe there's going to be a higher quality, higher efficiency with doing it in-house and making it affordable to get there too.
Got it. Okay. we're going to circle back a little later in the podcast because I want to talk about this business model more and just this service, because it's very unique angle in the way you approach it. But before I do that, want to talk about some personal tidbit. Do you happen to have anything you can share?
Yeah. I mean, so this is my second business, and, it came about in a way that I wasn't expecting, wasn't planned, at the time, but I've always been hungry to get back into business after I sold my first one. And the kick in the butt was because I had a son. It wasn't planned originally, and it was the best, change in my life, pivot in my life, fork in the road, if you will. And so I'm very grateful. He just turned 5 recently, and so being able to balance business while also actually having to have a personal life now has made me work smarter, not harder. So that's been great. And then, yeah, outside of that, I like to spend time, if you can see back here, with race cars, doing some race car stuff with my brother.
Yeah. So that's interesting. And the race car part, as I was doing some research on you, you definitely, at some point were you a professional racer or very on the verge of being a professional racer? It seemed like
On
you
the
have
verge. That's the perfect way to put it. Yeah, I actually got into a driver development program and worked my way up. And so was learned really heavily about the marketing side, promotional and networking side of things. And so got, very close to getting up into the national ranks. And then honestly, I had a mentor that told me, hey, you know what? You can try and go make it. And then you're always going to be left on the back foot because you're trying to get someone else to pay for your stuff. Go in business for yourself, and then you can pay for everything you want. And I was like, you know what? I like that idea a lot better because I got started late too. I got started when I was 18, been on the sim since I was 5 or 6, but not real world racing until we were 18. So pretty behind compared to most kids who get in go-karts at 4 or 5 years old nowadays.
Wow. Wow. That's interesting. Do you still go around the racetrack for fun, or is that like a chapter of your life doesn't happen anymore?
Yeah, it's still just for fun now. And yeah, especially even now having a business to take care of and a son to take care of. Yeah. And, getting older too, it's been a lot more humbled. My aspirations are not to race on the road and do all that stuff. We get to check out some cool tracks, try out some new cars, meet some cool people. And that's at my own pace. And I'm completely content with that.
That's awesome. Okay, so now I want to learn more about you as an entrepreneur. In researching you a little bit, it's your first business was in pet sitting and dog walking. So kind of tell me the story of how do you get to a point, it looks like you had some retail experience, you've done a few different things, you were racing, stuff like that. How do you get to a point where you go, man, I want to start my first business and it's in dog walking and pet sitting?
Yep, no, that's a great question. And I always laugh when I tell the story to people because, it was completely not planned. I knew that I wanted to try and go into business for myself. My father had been in his own business and still is to this day since I was 2 years old. And so I saw where he was at. I saw where his brother was at. My best friend from middle school, his mom had a business locally, and we got involved in it. It was a painting company. I got involved in it, during the summers. And once we got out of high school and we're dabbling in local technical college. And so I've always had a thirst for getting into business. Personally, is because a lot of times I always hit those ceilings at employers that they would not help me, get around and get through. And, it wasn't about necessarily the power or the money. It was the opportunity. And it was the fact that I put in so much effort, kind of like what my story has been sharing anyways, is finding, solutions to all these problems that pop up. And so it's like, well, this doesn't take a ton of money to get going. I've learned a lot about marketing and networking already. So I saved up money while I was a supervisor at a manufacturing plant. I, moved back to the area and said, let's just start this. All the money's just going to go to marketing, no real overhead. And we'll see what happens. And so I just picked that because it was the easiest thing to do, really.
Wow. And then it sounds like you had you had a fair amount of success in a short amount of time. How did that play out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I got in this business, my mother was she was a vet tech assistant before my brother and I were born. And so she was heavy into that world and all our pets at home too, big into troubleshooting. My father's also big into troubleshooting. So it just came naturally to me. And so because of that, I was just like, well, how can I learn about people's actual problems and solve them? And so rather than just going after cold leads all the time, I said, I'm going to partner up with other businesses that are already in this industry and see how we can help each other out, see how we can collaborate. And so that blew the doors wide open for me and really helped me learn the value of business to business networking to really get out there. And it blew up within the first 6 months. I was drowning in all the work and the behind the scenes operations. I was like, I need help now. So it took off fast.
Well, let me dig deeper because I feel like there's some learning opportunity in that. What did that look like when you started reaching out to businesses? Like, what were you doing? What did the conversation look like? And what did it lead to? Like, what type of results? Were they like sending you leads or what? Take me through that a little bit.
Yeah, a good bit of it was just introductions.
Okay.
Introductions and conversations. I'd say the biggest thing for me was getting introduced to referral sources of other people that, complementary businesses. So like a pet photographer, a pet food supplier, a pet, vet, things like that. Getting introduced to them allowed me to, put out some flyers or, come in and speak. I've had where there's like apartment complexes. They let me go and sponsor and speak at their monthly, tenant events. So it's just introductions. It's getting my face out there, introducing myself to people and getting to know what they're looking for. And so, yeah, I was in exchange of both, some introductions, but then also just a chance for me to present myself in what I'm doing.
And then were like the speaking opportunities, were they as it related to walking dogs or or pet sitting, or what did that look like in terms of how it actually led into referrals and business development?
Yeah, it was relationship building. Yeah, it
Okay.
wasn't like kind of really on stage presenting anything. So you
Got
got a
it.
couple minutes to say, hey, this is what I do. This is who I am, as the sponsor for some events that we helped sponsor. But most of it was just building relationships and getting my face out there.
Got it. Okay. And then so after you get along 6 months, you're at capacity. What does
Yeah.
that kind of look like from there?
Yeah, the capacity was, just juggling all the everything, right? I mean, most of it was the sales calls, but then the servicing the sales calls, right? And so I knew I really couldn't afford to trust someone with the marketing and sales dollars. I felt like that still was something I had to own and really take care of. But I felt like with this side, it was easy for me to go find people that had a passion, maybe even some experience to help do the fulfillment side. And so that's where I focused on finding some people. And this was back in 2016, 2017. At the time, Facebook was really great for posting actual jobs. They had a job board and everything that was free, open access. You'd get a flood of applicants. And so from my previous experience in a lot of other companies, a brick and mortar, franchise space, I learned about recruiting, screening, all that stuff. So I just took all that and applied it to my own process of the pre-screening questions, the phone interview questions, the face-to-face, and just got some referrals too, of people, hey, this person can work, and, did a terrible job not vetting them because they were a referral and learned the hard way with some of those. But yeah, quickly, stumbled along, finding some good help. And yeah, from there, it just frees up, exponential amount of time.
Wow. And then what ultimately happened to that business? Did you end up selling it? Did you close it down? What did it end up happening?
Yeah, so it's still in existence today, and it
Wow.
was actually sold. So by the end of the first year, once I stumbled through a couple bad hires on my part, I had about 4 good quality people, and one of them stood out because she had experience as a vet tech assistant before. And as the new year began, I'm like, hey, look, I can't be here taking a salary from this thing if I'm not out in the field producing anymore. Yeah, sure, I'm still getting the sales and doing the marketing, but I needed a pivot. And so I started really diving into my freelance consulting and started trying to get back into other businesses, even on a part-time basis. So I wasn't taking money from my startup, right? Because it was still in the startup phase. So I offered to that new hire, hey, I want you to go ahead and just take over managing this. You'll still be in the field, but you're kind of managing the operations, managing the others. I had my SOPs. All the training was there on how to use our CRM, what to do on, visits, and all the client, information was in the CRM. So it was very straightforward for people to follow. So I was like, hey, if you can just manage the team and their schedules, I'll hand this off to you. I'll give you a bigger cut. And then it just took off from there.
Wow.
The following year, because I kind of got lost in the consulting world, really wasn't around, which is shocking to look back and think, oh my gosh, how did this thing not die?
Right.
But it's because I had a great person. She was an amazing manager in person, and she's now the owner of the business because she approached me asking to buy the business from me the following year.
Wow.
Into the third year of business officially. And I was like, well, I can either say no and lose you or find some way to sell this thing and make it make sense for both of us. And so that's what we ended up doing. And she's got it today. She survived the pandemic, and she's made some pivots here and there, and it's still going strong.
What a cool story. What were your biggest takeaways from that first business? Like, what you had to stand back and you go, wow, these are 3 things I really learned. Does anything stand out?
Yeah, biggest thing is, people, right? Leaning on the right people, whether it's a mentor, collaborative partner, referral partner or something like that. But which I was very blessed with to have, was there's another lady, she was a dog walker too. She actually fed me some leads and some of her old clients that she was pivoting away from. to help me get going as well during my own, self, lead gen phase. So we always bounced ideas off each other. We kind of really helped keep each other sharp, even though we were technically competitors.
Wow.
So I've always valued that. And that was in the world way before, the pandemic happened, where everything was, pushed online. Everything was in a group. Everything was, somewhere online. So I love that experience in person. And so I tried to replicate that, in the latter years when I started the second business during the, in the middle of the pandemic, pretty much.
Yeah. What about hiring? How would you, you mentioned, which we've all been there, maybe
Yeah.
not making the most ideal hires.
Yep.
Was there any takeaways that you got from that in terms of finding the right people for your business?
Yeah. I mean, definitely hiring slow, firing fast, right? We've all heard that phrase, but
Yeah.
having more conversations with them more than just the phone interview, maybe a face-to-face here or there. Sometimes I like to actually take them on a walk, take them on an activity, because I get to learn more about them. They'll kind of open up a little bit more than a, formal sit down interview. I felt like that was helpful. Obviously, having temporary phases where they can come on board and work side by side with one of us to kind of vet them and see if they really are committed and want to do this. Because a lot of them we hire with, no formal pet sitting experience. They just
Sure.
were a decent human being and could pass the background check. The other side is definitely things like the personality assessments. That was huge that I found, because it does take certain personalities for different positions for longevity. And so that was a key piece that I saw too. You might work a couple weeks, couple months, but is this going to be really long term for you? That makes sense. So that was a good tool to add to my arsenal after those experiences.
Yeah, that's good stuff. So now fast forward from that, you kind of went into some various gigs and stuff. I think mostly like freelancing, probably working for others. And then that led you into what you're doing now, which is Leader Systems. What gave you the idea to go into what you're doing now? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, so I was thrust into that pretty much. Like I said, unplanned second business startup. And it was, because, I was dabbling in the freelance consulting, ended up back into a W-2 job from past, referrals and some other contacts I had. And so I treated their businesses like my business, and we got a lot done. There's a lot of, there's a lot of productivity issues. Let me put it that way. And so, I was going to town and loved it, but then the pandemic happened. A lot of the clients that we had for the companies I was working for were in Europe, were in Asia.
Wow.
I did a lot of aerospace work at the time, a lot of production, manufacturing stuff. And so that all came to a screeching halt. And so when that happened, I got furloughed. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to sit here. And other opportunities popped up, but logistically, they were pretty bad, especially for having a newborn son, that I'm like, I need to make a choice. Am I going to continue to make work my priority, or am I going to focus on being a father? And so it just, during that time frame of looking for a job and figuring out my options, it just didn't make sense to go back into work. And so I was like, well, I guess I'm starting another business. And that's what happened.
So Service Leader Systems, how do you come together with, hey, this is where I'm going to take my business? It's kind of a new area for you, I'm assuming. Sounds like your parents both were very much into like process or the details of the business. So maybe that's where you got some of it. But where did you get this idea? Like, was it from your past problems, or is it just always the place that you've worked, you've had trouble hiring people? And where did it all form where like, hey, this is a niche in the market I could fulfill?
Well, it was during, refining my resume and going through a couple of interviews with people, looking at that timeline of history I've had at all these companies I've worked at or was a part of, and saw some patterns. I saw where, yes, it was doing a lot with frontline management, productivity issues there, but realizing the root cause was more on upstream in the upper management, mismanagement, the wrong tools, the wrong mindset, something was broken on the top end, and that was affecting all this churn and lack of productivity on the front end. And so I felt like, well, if I was an employee, they're not going to hear me as much as being an outside consultant, especially because they're paying me to tell them what to do, essentially, or at least advise. And so I felt like it was a perfect opportunity to take what was successful at my previous companies, both with recruiting and training, especially, and apply that in other people's businesses, kind of install those tools and those systems in their businesses and help them maintain them moving forward.
Very cool. So kind of take me through how that business starts. Like, how do you get your first client? As you're just starting this out, there's always that initial phase like, oh, can I really do this? Is there really a market for this? So how did you get your first, did you go back to your tried and true method of referral system, or what did you do to get it rolling?
Yeah, well, I mean, the best way I got it going was when we were still in the pandemic and I was still coming up with the business. Like, it wasn't legitimized till 2021. And during 2020, the plan was created, but the business wasn't legitimized because to me, I didn't think it was legitimized yet. And I couldn't sell something I don't believe in.
Right.
And so two of my friends, they had painting businesses, mostly just did apartment turns. And so I just said, hey, let me come work for you. I know you need help. One of them just started his business. He branched off from the other one. So I was like, let me come help you. I'll be in the field with you. So you'll pay me because I'm producing for you, but I'm also going to be advising on how to optimize, your data operations, and then obviously help when we need to start recruiting too. So that's where it started. And, of course, usually our first client is not our best client. It's one of our best learning experiences though. And definitely the first year was, just tripping and stepping all over the place, trying to figure it out, and had some great opportunities. And a lot of them just didn't, go anywhere financially or, implementation wise. And so definitely over time, the word of mouth just kept growing and kept expanding those networks, especially now after the pandemic, because a lot of it, people are talking to each other in mastermind groups and this, that, and the other. And so when I've done something amazing for them, they share that in the group, someone will reach out to me. And so that's really how it's taken off, where it started.
Yeah, got it. And like in terms of the biggest challenges now, when you look at your business today, what do you see as your biggest challenges? Is it from the business development side? Is there any scaling issues? What keeps you up at night?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is definitely the business development. I'd say that's still always going to be the focal point. And I believe that's more from the fact that there is, like you said earlier, my service, my value proposition is not the same as others when it comes to like recruiting, staffing, and even training or coaching. But there's options out there, and people aren't necessarily educated on all the options. They see the old tried and true, decades old options. They think that's it. And so getting me in front of them, showing the unique approach that we have to this, but then validating that is one of the biggest challenges that we're still working through, pretty much on the education side of things, that it's legitimate too.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I guess the challenge I also see, if you don't mind me sharing, just from a perspective, because the way we met is I actually reached out for a client of mine. Yep. And I think what I thought when I initially talked was, wow, this is an awesome service, but I need an answer today. Like I need something urgent. And so I'm going to still go find a recruiter, which was I was originally trying to do.
Right.
But this is something that's on my list. I wouldn't say the top priority on my list, but it's on my list of 10 things that I'd like to do for this client. And I could see a need for these services. So what I was thinking about, and it's just putting kind of my business coaching hat on, I was like, well, if I'm owning your business, how do I move that up the list in my prospect's mind? So it goes from, yeah, we know we should have this and it's important, to, God, I have to have this or my business is not going to do whatever I needed to do, place XYZ. Yep. That was what went through my mind. What do you think about when you hear that?
Yeah, no, I think that's the biggest thing right there, especially the business owners are so inundated with choices they have to make, with people proposing some idea to them and all the, day-to-day, the stuff they have to deal with anyways, that it's a lot to deal with. And yeah, you really just need straightforward answers, but you also need fast quality results too.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing.
If you're a business owner feeling stuck in your business, overwhelmed, responsible for everything that happens, and working long hours, Tyler helps his clients develop processes, hire high-performing team members, and better understand their financial metrics and numbers to allow for a more predictable, less hands-on business. To schedule a free, no-pressure consultation, head to thinktyler.com and click the meeting button. Tyler would love to see if he can help you work on your business, not in your business. Schedule a consultation today at thinktyler.com. Think life, think success, think business.
This episode is brought to you by Google Gemini. With the Gemini app, you can talk live and have a real-time conversation with an AI assistant. It's great for all kinds of things like If you want to practice for an upcoming interview, ask for advice on things to do in a new city, or brainstorm creative ideas. And by the way, this script was actually read by Gemini. Download the Gemini app for iOS and Android today. Must be 18 plus to use Gemini Live.
But you also need fast quality results too.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's the biggest thing.
Because every business owner, you opened up in the beginning of this, as you said, whoever needs to hire people. Well, you just almost named every business owner in the world that's growing and scaling, right? I mean, they need to find good people. So this is like hugely important, setting this infrastructure up. I think it's just for me, it's like, okay, where does this fit in the prioritization of things? That, like you said, I mean, every business owner, it's urgent. It's unfortunately, a lot of times it's putting out fires.
Yeah.
What does it look like in terms of, now I want to pivot to the actual service that you provide. What does it look like? Like, what's a typical engagement look like? Is it free form, or is it customized to each client? Is it free form and it just kind of molds into something? Do you have a specific, maybe it's actually very specific to what you do? How does it look for a potential new client?
Yeah. I mean, there's a very planned out step-by-step process that we have.
Okay.
Because one, it's in our project management tool that our clients in, so they can track the progress and be involved, because there's some, pertinent information we need from them, right? And we want to make that as easy as possible for them. And so there's some automation with that, because my goal has been constantly, how can I eliminate as much time from my client to still get the same results out of us and ultimately out of the product they purchase from us? That's the biggest thing, without cutting out any, important details, without cutting out any valuable input. That's the biggest thing. And I mean, fortunately, pretty much aside from a couple of intake forms, they can spit out with the recruiting thing. We can spit out a whole turnkey plan for them within a week of engagement, and have ideally, and that's actually our offer still, because our track record proves it, is if we don't get you, some qualified people that you want to offer a job by the end of 30 days, we will give you 3 months worth of advisory calls for free, because something's broken. Something on the planning process, something on our, the data we got, the psychographics, the personality, the job description, revamp, all that stuff, like something missed. And so we need to investigate why, because 99% of the time it's going to work. The one time it doesn't, the 1% it doesn't, is because we've missed something that the client didn't clarify with us, or maybe devalued and didn't want to bring it up. And so now we're having this deeper conversation that, you have a much bigger problem than what you alluded to originally.
Got it. So kind of take me through, like, what size business, or who's going to be a profile, and how do they typically express their pain points to you? Is it, I just can't find someone? What does it typically look like for you?
Yeah, some of the biggest is, can't find people. And when they say that, you got to break it down. What does that mean? Usually it's a combination of experience that they need, which is another conversation, because it may be your expectations are too high and you don't have a good onboarding or training. So that's a whole nother conversation. And that's why we have that service. But the other is culture fit. The other thing we're looking at is, how are they going to fit into the current culture? Is your current culture healthy and receptive to the right people? If we were to go find a good person for you, do I feel comfortable that they're going to survive working with you? So that's some of the biggest things, is making sure that there's, once again, like I talked about earlier, on the upstream side of things, that everything's good to go there first before we start trying to bring people in, or you're going to be fighting an ending battle because you have all these holes that you need to fill.
Yeah. Do you have any stories where someone's come to you and you sense maybe their culture is toxic, or maybe that's too strong of a word, but just, man, there's the turnover here, whatever the red flags are? Any stories around that where you've experienced that?
Yeah, because and it's almost every case, right? Because while everyone has good intentions, it is hard to manage people, manage expectations, and have a good, healthy culture, and then maintain that too.
Yeah.
Because there's so many dynamics at play, right? Every new person that comes in or out is going to change that, is going to threaten that. And then, of course, everything going on in the world, globally, collectively, and then individually, is going to affect that too. So it's a constant battle. But there's the difference between kind of like toxic is because they're not addressing it.
Right.
Versus the people like, they know there's room for improvement. They're trying. That's why they've approached me. That's why they're open to this. But then there's others that are kind of testing us and like, okay, we've tried everyone else. How are you different? What are you going to do? And I'm like, you're asking the wrong question. I understand the question, but I can already tell as we dive deeper in the conversation, it's you, not them or the service provider. And so if they're not willing to see the wrongs in their ways, I can't help them. And I will do everything I can on a call to say, you know what, this is not a good thing. I don't even want to start working with you. I mean, I'll push things if someone's really adamant. We usually don't close on the first call. We usually have to go to a second call minimum. I don't have enough information. The call's not long enough on a first introduction. They probably don't truly, understand what I just told them to. It needs to marinate. I will usually push people where I feel like you don't actually want to change. You just want me to solve all your problems for you magically. And that's not how this works.
Yeah.
I don't even want to begin working with you because then that's my name. Yeah. Every presentation I have, I want to put the next company I just helped with and show the results. I don't want to skip anybody. And so I don't want to bring someone on that I feel like I got to pretend never existed in the first place. So yeah, we've run into that a lot. Fortunately, most of them don't actually become clients in the first place. And the ones we do, we've had to take some losses because of that.
Wow. When it comes to culture, what do you see where a lot of small businesses kind of miss keeping that culture intact? You kind of alluded to one thing. You said sometimes the owner doesn't deal with, or the leadership doesn't deal with the problems. But what do you typically see that they're just not doing that's keeping a tight, good culture, quality culture?
Yeah. I mean, I believe the biggest thing that I've seen is the misconception of what they feel like is working, feel like what's not, feel like what is happening, what isn't. There's no actual data being measured. And I know that sometimes sounds cold and robotic, but it's the truth is even if you're not even documenting conversations you've had with people, good and bad, how do you know what progress has been happening? Are we going in a good direction? Are we going in a bad direction? I feel like there's got to be some type of documentation behind every person, right? Just the same as you should have 6 months, 12 month, annual review, whatever. You should be having those conversations with everybody. Somebody should, right? Even if management having with their people, owners having with their managers, whatever. You got to be having these conversations. 9 times out of 10, when I come to a company, they say there's culture issues. They're not having conversations until it's already a problem. And so you have all this stuff that's lurking and it's not being addressed for one reason or another. Maybe people feel scared to speak up. Maybe if they feel like they're not going to be heard. Maybe even if they are heard, nothing's going to be done. There's a lot of reasons employees say, you know what? Not worth my energy, not worth my job. I'm just going to stay here, stay quiet, and just kind of suffer in silence. A lot of times it's the lack of touch points, kind of like with clients, right? Yeah. Keeping happy clients. If you're not having those regular touch points, they're either going to go find someone else or someone else is going to go find them.
So true. That's so true.
Same thing with your employees.
It's interesting. So it sounds like, part of what you're saying is that accountability is one, that touch points with employees is that accountability has to exist. And I agree with you. Obviously, my side of the business said metrics are an important side of my business. So I do agree with you, some type of measuring or something that indicates, that we're moving forward or moving backwards, or doesn't even matter which direction, just so we know which direction we're going and we can quantify and kind of evaluate, is it the right direction? Where do you think core values play into this? I mean, we talk about them a lot. And when I say we, you hear about them all the time on LinkedIn or wherever you go. But it's funny when you talk to your typical business owner, that's not usually one of the phrases that'll come out of their mouths in a half an hour conversation. So where do they fit and what are your thoughts around them?
Yep. And that's actually one of the things in a recruiting process that we like to go above and beyond with the candidate experience is actually creating a company introduction presentation. It's an interactive guide that actually goes out in the automated responses to applicants so they can learn more about the company. That's a chance for the company to brand themselves with videos, pictures, whatever about the people, the culture, whatever, right? Most clients say, hey, I'm stuck on this form because I don't know what to put in here. They don't have a mission. They don't have a vision. They don't have core values. They don't even have it written down anywhere. And I mean, these are multi-million-dollar companies. Yeah. Some of these are acquisitions. I mean, someone bought this business and it's non-existent from the previous owner or the new owners. And that's a shame, right? Because even going back to the accountability, like you said earlier, with those touch points with your employees, it's not even just accountability of, okay, employee, what are you doing for the company? It's, okay, what is the company doing for the employee? Or I see it all the time, especially in sales, right? Good sales teams will help their sales reps create their own personal financial goals, right? And I'm sure you do that kind of stuff with the business owners.
Sure.
Why aren't we doing that for all employees? And it doesn't have to just be financial, right? It's what other stuff do they want to learn, grow, and develop in? And how can the business afford those opportunities, whether it's financially, relationally, or logistically? We're not doing that stuff, right? That goes back to the core values where how are we navigating? What is actually helping keep us on the road in this, company? What do those core values look like, right? We don't have any. And so we're just all over the place. And it's going to get swayed to and fro, either by the owner's emotions, a client's emotions, and employees' emotions that disrupts everyone else. Like it's chaos at that point. If you don't have some clear guidelines in place that are also true, right? Not some big, crazy, big words and big definitions that no one's going to remember or follow through on, but actually something that matters and is bought into from the bottom up, not the top down.
Yeah, that's a huge one. I had a guest on my show a while back, and his whole thesis was around, he had built a company from zero all the way to $100 million and ultimately exited and sold it. And his whole thesis was around the most important number, is what he called it. And every department, it worked all the way throughout the company. Every department had a most important number that then flowed down to each individual employee that had their own most important number. And so his whole theory, and he obviously proved it by selling his company and growing it so fast, is that if everybody knew what their most important number was, all the way up to the very top, even as a CEO, he had a most important number that everybody knew, what his number was, and they were all trying to target whatever their number was. It created this cohesive, everybody was on the same page then. Everybody knew what they were supposed to be doing. So it's kind of very similar to what you're saying, is that, everybody's got to be on the same page, kind of know what the plan is, exhibiting the same core values of what the company wants to do. And in theory, at least, the results should follow.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. No, I love that. And I love the way he titled that too. It may not be the same, but I one of my mentors introduced me to that concept years ago when I was helping with his communications company, because they had a massive productivity and staffing issue. And the corporate company that they were also authorized retailer through was threatening to close some of their stores and other stuff. And so he introduced me to the book, 4 Disciplines of Execution. And it goes into that where they call it the wildly important goal, right? But same thing, it's creating this cadence of accountability. There's a clear scoreboard and you see everyone, nobody can hide, including the owner, the CEO. Everyone's got a role to play. And I believe that brings more empowerment to each other. Okay, I'm looking out for you, you're looking out for me. It's not everyone for themselves, which is usually what happens because there was no parameters to begin with. And now you have this toxic culture because everyone's just out for themselves because there was no other guidelines.
Yeah. That's a good book. It reminds me, I got to go back and probably refresh on it. All right.
Yes.
A while back. Yeah, that's a good one. Like that. Okay. How about just looking ahead from your business? Like, I know we talked about business development being one of them. Like, where do you want to be, let's say 3 years from now? Like, what's your big focus of where you'd want to take your business and just your own personal goals?
Yeah, I'm always trying to I'm careful about thinking too big too soon, right? I'm more of a realistic person, but I do have my head in the clouds at times too. and so really it's more about trying to monitor the feedback of my audience right now and what they're receptive to, both warm and cold audiences, and seeing what makes sense into the new year. Some of the things that we've actually even stumbled upon, even with our training services, is developing a whole nother stream of revenue, because all these assets and stuff we've been building for our current clients is stuff that we have, in our sandbox that we can repurpose for other clients at a more affordable rate. If they don't want something custom built, personal to their company, there's nothing proprietary and it's all kind of general knowledge, but it's already packaged up.
Yeah.
We have something completely different that we can sell to people at a much affordable rate. So for me, it's kind of thinking outside of the box in terms of what we already have and how we can repackage it, reposition it in a lot of ways so we don't add overhead, but we can, create this whole other stream to reach people that we might not be able to reach because they can't afford us right now.
Yeah.
It's the wrong timing, like whatever that is. So I believe a lot of it is all the people I've run across that it wasn't the right time, wasn't the right price, or they weren't in the right position to take advantage of this, even though they could see it when they get there, right? Because they're like still a solopreneur, or maybe they just have one office manager or one sales rep or whatever. They're just subs, 1099s. We can recapture that business at a later date. So that's one of the biggest things for me is we've had these conversations. We've spent the money. We have these names. Go back, find something else that makes sense to them right now. I believe that's going to be one of the best things for us to focus on to help us scale and get us to a place where, for me, I can do more of this stuff, racing, because my brother and I want to travel around the world and go do this stuff with all the other people I know in other countries and go race their cars instead and afford us the time and money to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you having those assets, I mean, definitely having some type of informational products that people can either get as an entryway into your business or even potentially a solution. It makes me think of, there's a guy, I can't think of the name of it, but he sells SOPs for trade service businesses. I think home service and trade service. Mm-hmm. And he actually sells the whole thing for like $10,000. Now, it gives videos. I mean, it's a lot. So it's not just like, a binder of processes,
right?
But it's still a pretty high price point. And, I actually had a client look at it, or a prospect look at it, that came to me and said, what do you think of this? And it's a high price point. I mean, I think it's a great entryway. I think some people buy it and think, okay, I've got my problem solved with processes. Unfortunately, probably don't, because you still need to customize them for your business and invest time so they really fit around what you want to do. But I mean, it's clearly the guy selling them. You can tell by his reviews and stuff. There's a market for that. So I think that would be a cool entryway for you to have, like that educational opening, and then you kind of have that next step up where if people want a more premium involved, you get involved. It kind of is the natural progression that you see a lot of companies that are selling information and services. So that's cool. That's a good goal for 2025. It's funny you should say, true story here. So have you ever heard the term BHAG? BHAG, BHAG.
Yeah, I feel like
big, hairy, audacious goal. I can't remember who coined that term, but the whole spirit of it is like a 10-year goal. Yep. I hate that, because I'm like, I can't think 10 years out. Like, I have a hard time with my clients bringing that into those discussions, because I just feel like it's really far out there and it's very uncontrollable. So that's why I said 3 years, because in my mind, I could get my head around 3 years. Like, I feel like you can break it down into steps to get to 3 years. Even 5 years, I have a hard time. It's like, man, it's hard for people to go, there's just so many unknowns, But I feel like 36, at least it's not too crazy out there where you can kind of get your arms around it. So I think we're somewhat similar in that regard.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's hard. So much can change. And I mean, another 3 years would be perfect timing, because that's before the next election happens and disrupts everything. So, we got to think of that stuff too. But yeah, 5 years, 10 years, oh my gosh, my son will be close to a teenager. I can't even fathom that. It's just crazy to think that far out. I think, even like EOS's traction, has a good way to break down those goals and have some good milestones. You don't want to be too nearsighted. Right. You can't be nearsighted, but you can't be too far out either, where you're not even paying attention to the steps in front of you.
Yeah.
I tell people all the time, one step at a time, and I say that, but I can see down the road too, just not a whole state away.
Does cash flow have you down? Profit, not where you think it should be? Maybe it's the long hours. Let's meet to see if I can help. I bridge driving the financial performance of your business to hit growth and success targets. Book a complimentary meeting at meetforgrowth.com to get started now. Once again, that's meetforgrowth.com. I look forward to talking with you. And thanks for listening to the show.
Just not a whole state away.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. That's a great way to say it. And I know we're giving some people whole ulcers out there, because I know the 10-year isn't necessarily a target you intend to 100% hit. It's more of like giving you a mission, if you will, or a North Star, I think commonly people call it. It's kind of just a way to look forward.
Kind of like things like retirement, plans and stuff like that. Yeah, you got to do that because there's compounding effect.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, hey man, this is an awesome conversation. You are a great guest. Your website's just a few things I want to share here. So your main website is serviceleadersystems.com. You mostly work with trade service home services, is that correct?
Yes. Yep. That's just from word of mouth. That's just what we've kept optimizing for.
But you would be open. I mean, if a client was in another industry, you could potentially help them too. Is that a fair comment?
Yeah. At the principal level, our services, because I've been in so many different industries over my years, from manufacturing, brick and mortar, a lot of service-based businesses, it can apply to people that approach us. It can most likely apply.
Okay, so once again, serviceleadersystems.com. If you want, there's a freebie. If you add a slash and then put the word attraction, I'll of course put this in the show notes at thinktyler.com. There's a freebie there that you can go get. Do you want to share just what that freebie is?
Yeah, so that freebie is it's called the Attraction Blueprint. It's kind of my breakdown of our recruiting service and what leads into what people would need to prepare for their training service, and it's a do-it-yourself guide. So it's really taking the step by step, what my thought process would be if I were to help them. And they're walking through it so they can start gathering some of the information. Maybe they're at the level where it's simple enough they can do it themselves. But it also kind of shows them my thought process and what I'm looking at to be more creative with solving their recruiting issues, but then taking advantage of things like retraining to help with onboarding and recruiting and how all those support each other once you've got them all in place.
So you just reminded me of, I interviewed Phil Risher, which I know you know recently, and he used the phrase, he goes, I like to show people how to cook and the recipe, or I'm sorry, I like to show people the recipe, how to do it. But if you want to use my services, I show you how to cook. And the way he said it was just awesome. I'm messing it way up like I usually do. But it's kind of like you're saying, you'll show them everything. But if you really want someone to help you to actually do it, I'm your person to do that.
And here's the reason why we've done that. It's enough to get them going. But to me, I have not found a way to say, well, here's a do-it-yourself course to really go through it, because they don't have the time. They can't implement anyways. They can't hold themselves accountable. That's what they pay me for, is the implementation and accountability at an affordable price rate that brings a good return on investment. But at least right now, they can get a better idea of who I am as a person. If they think I'm going to drive them nuts, or if they're like, hey, I like the way this guy thinks, I'd like to talk to him. Exactly. That's kind of really what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, it's a trust thing. It builds trust. In fact, I read somewhere, I don't know how accurate it is. I imagine it's reasonably accurate. Something like 70 to 80% of informational products never even get looked at that we buy.
Yeah.
But to your point, it's like a trust. I think some people buy it just out of trust and kind of just check it out before making a bigger commitment.
Right.
The other two things I'll add in my show notes at Think Tyler, obviously your LinkedIn, I'll share. And then I love that I'm going to probably copy this idea. On Spotify, you have on a playlist, you have all your podcasts. So I'll share that link too, guys. If you're interested in hearing some Cliff's others podcasts, it's all in one playlist. So I'll share that.
Perfect.
Other than that, is there anything else you want to end with, or anything I left out?
No, I think that's it. Yeah, you covered everything. That's the best way to reach me too, is either they can go to my website because it links to everything else, my LinkedIn, my videos, our testimonials and services. And so that's honestly the best place for someone to go if they have questions, to even book a call with me if they just want to talk to me tomorrow.
Awesome. Okay, Cliff. Hey, thanks so much for your time. Hope to have you again here in visiting me in the future. And thanks for being on the show.
Yeah. Thank you, Tyler.
That's all for this episode of Think Business with Tyler. But we have plenty more resources to help you in your pursuit of business excellence on our website at thinktyler.com. If you'd like to be featured in a future episode of the show, feel free to reach out to us on social media at think_Tyler. We look forward to helping you think life, think success, and think business.